Pilgrims we've journeyed, for we have been told the world is my parish. Come answer the call.
Hello, this is the most exciting thing. A tour around the world on the Queen of Peace flight. You know, many of you have asked me what it was like. What was it like to go on that trip to Russia, Father, and crown the Blessed Mother in Red Square? I mean, what were the Russians like? And how was it to be in Fatima for the 75th anniversary of the apparitions? And boy, I bet you had a great time in Paris. What was it like there, Father? And Lourdes. Oh, boy, you all got to see the Infant of Prague. Wow, I bet that was great. And wasn't it fantastic, Father, to see all those wonderful Polish people in Warsaw and Częstochowa? And finishing up with Rome, with the Holy Father and a Mass of beatification. What was it like to be on that trip? Well, you're going to have a chance to find out. We're going to give you an overview. Come with us in this trip now to Paris. See Notre Dame. Come with us and follow us to Lisieux, the city of St. Therese, on to Lourdes, and then fly with us to Fatima and see the wonderful things that happened to us there and be part of a crowd of almost 750,000. And then to that historic peace flight, the Queen of Peace victorious flight to Russia after we visited Prague. Be with us in Red Square as we crown the Blessed Mother, Queen of all Russia. And watch us as we pray in the Orthodox Cathedral. A historic moment, East and West praying for the first time in 1,000 years together. What a wonderful experience it all was. Climaxed in Rome with a Mass for the Holy Father, when he beatified all those new wonderful martyrs from Mexico. Watch with us now and pick up the excitement that we all had, 1,000 of us who traveled on that victorious Queen of Peace flight. God bless you. It was once called the Sea of Darkness, the great oceans which separated Europe from America. False truths, misconceptions prevented sailors from crossing the invisible barrier between Europe and the New World. But one man, a deeply religious young man of 22 years of age, challenged the old beliefs by embracing the unknown. He was an explorer from Spain who defied the wisdom of the times and found the New World. On August 3rd, 1492, 3 tiny wooden ships bobbed on the mercy of the Atlantic Ocean, guided only by faith in a new land they had never seen. On board the flagship, the young captain kept a diary of his trials and wrote of his love and devotion to Jesus Christ and his Mother Mary. The captain's name was Christopher Columbus, and the flagship was called the Santa Maria. On October the 12th, 1492, Columbus set sight on the Canary Islands after a voyage of 33 days. He named the island San Salvador, which means our Savior. October 1992, 1,000 pilgrims stand in line to board 2 jumbo jets bound for Paris. The chartered trip was called the Victorious Queen of Peace Flight to honor the Virgin Mary. 500 years after Columbus discovered America, to the exact month, the pilgrims are going home, not to find new land, but to honor the woman who sent them. They will sail over a different sea of darkness and into an unknown to glorify a woman they have never seen. It may have been the courage of conviction of one man which founded the New World, but it is the determination of nearly 1,000 more who are bringing it back home again. Paris, a city known for romance and a risque nightlife. But beneath its bawdy exterior is the Paris which is home to some of the most famous saints of the Catholic Church. This is the chapel of the Rue du Bac, where the Virgin Mary appeared to St. Catherine in 1830. Her incorrupt body rests at the front of the chapel in a glass coffin. In a side chapel is the incorrupt heart of St. Vincent de Paul. Incorrupt bodies are a mystery in the Church, since they have not received special preparation, that they do not decompose after death. But to find the real heart of the spiritual side of Paris, look inside her churches. This is the Cathedral of Notre Dame, which translates into Our Lady. May be the world's most famous church dedicated to the Virgin Mary.
Well, on our world peace flight to Russia, we chose to come here to Lisieux because St. Therese, who was honored by this basilica, which incidentally is the largest building in the world honoring any living person, any person who's ever lived. It's not George Washington or Caesar or anyone else, but the person honored and remembered in the world by the largest edifice on earth is this little saint who died at the age of scarcely 25. We're back here in the back of the basilica because very few people remember that a great person like this, and one of the greatest persons that ever lived, if we judge by the building, had very special parents. And we are here at the tomb of Mr. and Mrs. Martin. And this little saint who became love itself, she said, "I want to be loved because of my love, I'm everything." Her parents are buried here. And at the foot of the statue that stands over the tomb of her parents are the words of St. Therese, "The good God gave me a mother and a father more worthy of heaven than of the earth."
Inside the convent of Lisieux is the incorrupt body of St. Therese.
We're coming up a little narrow street that leads to the house where St. Therese moved when she was 3 years old after her mother's death. Her father brought her here because they had cousins here who could help with the raising of the children. This is the room of St. Therese when she was a child, and she was dying in this bed. Doctors had no hope of her living, and her disease was mysterious. It was they couldn't determine exactly what it was, but she was fading away. And then after this Novena to Our Lady of Victories, the statue beside the bed is a replica now at the spot. The real one is over her tomb in the Carmel Chapel. The statue came alive and smiled at Therese. And at that moment, she was cured.
The grotto at Lourdes. Here, a young girl named Bernadette Soubirous claimed to see a beautiful lady in a small cave at Massabielle. Nobody believed her at first, not even the bishop in this area. Today, Lourdes is a famous place of pilgrimage for thousands of faithful believers of the Virgin Mary. Bernadette lived in a little mill, windmill, at the bottom of it. They were absolutely dirt poor. So poor that she went to the garbage dump very often to pick up things because they couldn't afford to buy anything. And she was asthmatic, and this particular day they were down by the river where the cave is, which is called the grotto, and she was drawn into there. She was with her friends. They saw her wade into the water and go into the cave, and they, what on earth is she doing? The girl's got asthma, and it's February. And when she came out, her face was all aglow, and she said she saw a beautiful lady. Well, they thought she was a little nuts. She was a little backward. So backward that she hadn't even made her first communion, and she was 14 years old. The sister that examined her for the first communion class said she didn't know enough religion to make her first communion at 14. Now, when you realize today, 8-year-olds make enough knowledge to make their first communion, and she was 14. So I think it's an important point because someone that dumb, intellectually, wouldn't have been smart enough to make up a story like that. And face up to the interrogation she went through with the politicians and the government officials. The man who interviewed her was an atheist. So there was no way she could have undergone an interrogation and stood by what she said. But this is the legacy of Lourdes and Saint Bernadette, which still lives today. The water at Lourdes has been credited with miraculous healings, all because of the humiliation which Bernadette was willing to suffer. The Virgin Mary told her to dig in the dirt near the cave and smear it on her face. The crowd jeered and mocked Bernadette. But water came up from the ground and is now credited with 67 miraculous healings. And in the Catholic Church, the word miraculous is not taken lightly. When we talk about a miracle, you know, people on TV say, always claiming miracles so easily. So we just say, oh, we got a miracle, praise God. Then maybe it is, we don't know. Maybe it isn't, maybe it's psychosomatic. But when the Catholic Church talks about a miracle, it's not just somebody jumped out of a wheelchair at a prayer service who may relapse next week. What happens here, they only will accept miracles that are accepted by the medical profession. So that they must have documentation of the person before they come here, and their complete medical record, x-rays, everything. Then, if they claim a miracle, all these patients are in hospitals here. Every patient that arrives is x-rayed. Medical reports filed on every patient, every one of those carts and stretchers you saw. There's a medical record here in Lourdes. Doctors attend them, they're examined, their medical records are examined, and then, if there is a miracle in a healing, they are again examined by not one doctor, but by 6. And when 6 doctors say it is supernatural, when 6 doctors will certify that what has happened is impossible, that's a miracle in the Catholic Church. Fatima, Portugal, on October the 13th, 1992. 500 years and 1 day after Columbus discovered the New World, and exactly 75 years after the miracle of the sun, where the sun appeared to fall out of the sky in front of 70,000 spectators during an apparition of the Virgin Mary.
Fatima is a story about Mary. It's not a story about Lucia. It's not a story about a visionary. It's a story about Mary and Mary's love for her son, and wanting us to love her son, and wanting us to know her son and love him better and love people in the world.
A quick preview of about what happened here. 1911 was a revolution which threw out the royal family and persecuted the church. It was the forerunner of communism, in a sense, because it was anti-clerical. And Marxist in origin. In 1917, 3 young children, a little boy and 2 girls, claimed to have seen the Virgin Mary in the Covidaria. When Mary appeared in 1917 on May the 13th at 12 o'clock, she continued to come each month on the 13th till the October the 13th, when the sun danced. But in those messages, she foretold that a force of atheism would come from Russia that would conquer the world if we didn't pray and cause persecution on the church. What I find extraordinary about that, in May of 1917, Russia was still Christian. In fact, Russia was still Christian in the beginning of October of 17. Holy Mother Russia would persecute the church. Holy Mother Russia would have a force of atheism. Impossible. But it did, didn't it? And yet Mary foretold it. And the children were also shown a vision of a future pope with his cassock covered in blood, clutching his chest in St. Peter's Square. I remember reading that in the 50s. And I was even asked to explain what it meant. And we took it as symbolic, that but maybe the Pope wasn't actually going to be attacked, but it was a symbol of the church, that the church would be attacked. We know now, don't we, that the Pope was attacked. And it was on May the 13th at 12 o'clock, the actual day and time of the apparition. Today also marks another anniversary at Fatima. 45 years ago, the International Pilgrim Virgin statue left Portugal on a mission to carry the Fatima messages all around the world. She is now returning.
The statue has wept several times. I know there are 22 cases documented when the statue has wept. There are probably many more. One case I heard about took place in Asbury Park, New Jersey. The statue was in a candlelight procession in the streets, and as it passed under the street lights, they would turn off. And the police wanted to know how the people running the procession were doing that to the street lights, and of course they were doing nothing. It was happening automatically. And after the statue passed, they would turn back on. The first trips, I believe, to the communist bloc nations, where religious articles were not allowed to be taken into the country. And the statue was in its blue bunting bag. I think there was one occasion where it was in an automobile and another where it was in a bus. And when the border guards ordered the people out of the vehicles and searched them, even though the statue was there as big as life, they were not able to see it. And it passed in successfully.
The people in the car obviously were still able to see it.
They were still able to see it. She was commissioned in 1947. She was blessed in the Covidaria in Fatima by the Bishop of Fatima to travel around the world spreading the Fatima message.
I find very impressive the waving of the handkerchiefs. It's very moving to see all those thousands and thousands of people waving affection to the Mary. But you have to remember, they're not waving to a statue. They're waving to a statue that symbolizes Mary's presence. It's to Mary they're waving, and it's to Mary they're saying goodbye. It's just afternoon, the time of the miracle of the sun. White doves are released. One of the doves comes to rest on the icon of Jesus Christ, King of all nations, and it doesn't leave.
I was holding the picture of Jesus Christ, King of all nations, when the dove landed on top of it. What astounded me, not so much that the dove landed, but that it stayed there. We changed partners, and it continued to stay there. And that's when I think I've realized that there was something more than just a bird lighting on a picture or on a portrait or a painting. And I don't know that I was overwhelmed, but I was deeply impressed.
We were standing right by the
And one
images.
dove stood right there over the...
When the
At
clock
first it circled over the crowd, and then it landed on Jesus as King of all nations at exactly 1 o'clock.
when the miracle of the sun occurred 75 years ago.
Oh,
And it
At
stayed
that
there
same
for
time.
10 minutes.
As this day draws to an end, the sun slips behind blood-red clouds and disappears. A quiet end to the anniversary of one of the most famous accepted miracles of the church. But the message of Fatima survived even its little messengers. 2 of the children died shortly after the apparitions. The third, Lucia, is still alive and lives in a cloistered Carmelite community in Portugal. She sees no one.
In Prague is the most famous image of the infant Jesus, known all over the world, or copies all over the world, and the story is quite simple. It was a statue which we believe belonged to St. Teresa of Avila, and a friend of St. Teresa, a noble woman, sent it to this church in Prague. And a miracle took place through the statue, and the word spread, and people got copies of the statue, particularly for when you're in financial need. It seemed that the infant Prague just brought everything you needed, and that is why the devotion spread all through the world. But it's the most famous statue of the infant in the world, the most famous statue of Our Lady's Son. So we felt fitting for Our Lady, who wants to bring about the triumph of her heart in order that her Son may reign, that she should make her first visit behind the Iron Curtain, where her Son was in prison. In a sense, that was the idea. So after we had this meeting with the Archbishop in his chapel, he was reluctant to let us go, because we went to the Church of Our Lady of Victories, where the infant is, and the whole place was black, dark, nobody around. We went in anyway, and I went in the back and pulled some switches and things. I was lighting all the lights in the rectory, I found out afterwards, and suddenly people came, and before you knew it, people were coming from everywhere. An organist came. And the statues, the lights went on over the statue, and there the statue of Our Lady of Fatima was placed alongside the statue of her Holy Child. And there's a tradition in Portugal that whenever 2 famous images meet, something wonderful always happens. And something wonderful happened. 2 months after that visit came the first break in the communist domination of the world. It was called the Prague Spring. It happened 2 months later, and that was the turning point. That was really the turning point in communist domination of the world. Now, 25 years later, Pope Paul VI came to Fatima in May 13th, just as it happened 25 years before, and in October, we set forth on the 75th anniversary with the same statue and flew directly from Fatima to Prague, but this time, as you know, came publicly received, and we couldn't get into the Church of the Holy Infant, the Church of Our Lady of Victories, because the group was so large. We filled the cathedral. And it was very interesting, as you probably remember, that the Archbishop who received, the Bishop Chancellor of Prague who received us, recalled that he was the secretary of Cardinal Beran, and he remembered all those secret letters and communications 25 years before, when we had arranged for the statue to come to Prague.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary.
This is the moment that has taken 75 years. And the prayers of millions of faithful followers to accomplish Catholic pilgrims in Red Square with the crucifix and icons reciting the rosary in front of Lenin's tomb. Under the watchful eye of Russian guards, they are closely monitored and directed during pouring rain. Finally, the gates are removed, and the entire group marches right down the middle of the Red Square.
Jesus, I believe. Jesus, I believe. Jesus, I believe. I believe in you. Mary, I believe. 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 Mary, I believe in you. Father, I believe. Father, I believe. Father, I believe. I believe in you. Spirit, I believe. Spirit, I believe. Spirit, I believe. I believe in you. Mary, I believe. Mary, I believe. Mary, I believe. I believe in you. Jesus, I believe. 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 I believe in you. I believe in you.
The beauty of the cathedral gave rise to a legend. It is believed that when the construction of the cathedral was completed, Ivan the Terrible called its architects and asked whether they could build something more beautiful. And when they answered that perhaps they could, he ordered to blind them. So nothing more beautiful would be built here. So that's St. Basil's Cathedral.
This icon was done by a professional iconographer. This woman worked on it for 360 hours after a great deal of prayer. She felt that she did not do this painting herself, that it was done with the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. So you will see it says, by the hand of Patricia Delahunty Moran. And she said her hand was merely the instrument which was able to make this icon a reality. It's an icon of Our Lady of Fatima, and you will see the vision of hell with the devils and the souls that are in hell. You'll see the 3 children from Fatima. You will see an angel, Angel Portugal. You will also see Our Lady with her Immaculate Heart. And this is very fitting because our conference has been one of the alliance of the 2 hearts. And we're trying to show the importance of Mary's Immaculate Heart along with devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
The Orthodox Church of Russia does not accept the Pope as sovereign pontiff. In fact, for the last 1,000 years, has not even accepted representatives of the Catholic Church. Today, I had the privilege of making the first symbolic gesture towards unity in the Church by presenting an icon of Fatima to the Archbishop of Moscow. The night before, I had the great honor of meeting the Patriarch of all Russia.
It's completely packed to the doors, and these people have been standing here for over an hour and a half. Last night, the cathedral was packed for a 3-hour service with the Patriarch and 5 bishops, plus many, many clergy. In a few moments after the service has ended, we will be presenting this icon of Our Lady of Fatima and a chalice to the Archbishop Metropolitan of Moscow.
The Orthodox Church believes everything Roman Catholics believe almost, except they don't recognize the authority of the Pope. They believe he's the successor of Peter, but for them he's more like chairman of the board. And that's not what we think of him, although for us he is the head of the Church as supreme pontiff. But for them he's just another bishop who happens to succeed Peter. So for them, their patriarch, and there are many patriarchs for the Greeks, for the Russians, for the Coptics, for the Maronites, each patriarch is autonomous, running his church. Whereas we do have some Eastern rites, and we have rites, not the Orthodox, who do recognize the authority of the Pope. So to meet the Russian patriarch of the Orthodox Church was like you meeting the Pope, because that's what he is to the Russians.
Нам еще ценно то, что вы все-таки прибыли из того города.
We appreciate very much your arrival from the city,
когда было пророчество,
from the place where it happened, where the Virgin appeared and said her words about Russia.
И нам хотелось бы, чтобы это пророчество в эти дни исполнялось.
And we want to say that the holy words of Virgin came
среди
to
наших
life
сограждан.
now, and that these words brought faith back into hearts of our people.
Поэтому мы вам очень благодарны за ваш
Thank
вклад.
you very, very much to your
Передадим его
donation,
святейшему нашему отцу.
and we will pass it to our patriarch.
Did you know the statue didn't get to Red Square today? It got to the square, but only after we had processed. It was delayed for some reason. It's been proposed that the statue should go to Red Square, and that the youth should take it.
The Pilgrim Virgin statue has finally reached its destination, but the real mission is just beginning. Many more prayers and much more support is still needed. But like David against Goliath, a tiny stone has brought down a huge monster. This time the stone was the simple truth, tied together by faith in God. The same stones, the same truths, and a simple rosary. night, across from Lenin's tomb in Red Square, a Russian girl baptized a Catholic 2 weeks ago will symbolically crown the Virgin Mary as Queen of all Russia for the very first time.
Go before. She's going to put the crown. She's going to do it. She's going to do it. She has to get a picture so the other can get the picture. Let the photographer get in here. Please stay back. Stay back. Put it in the hole.
Red Square was very special. Just the thought of being in Red Square, publicly praying, singing, processing with Our Lady's statue, something no one dreamt of as short a time ago as 2 or 3 years ago. And here we were doing it. Not a shot had been fired, and a revolution in attitude had permitted this activity to take place, a free religious act.
Von heute ist Russland Eigentum Mariens.
From today on, Russia belongs to our Blessed Mother.
It's quite a reception. Of all the receptions we've had, this is the greatest one, even greater than Fatima.
The Catholic Church in Poland has revered Mary as Mother of the Church for hundreds of years. But for many years after World War II, Poland fell under the atheist rule of communism. "45 years ago, the Queen of Peace flight from the United States brought the same Pilgrim Virgin statue to Poland, but the statue was not permitted to leave the plane. Pilgrims from the United States were permitted to enter Poland, but armed guards stood outside to prevent the statue's entry. Instead, a wire outline was fashioned by some of the priests of the country, and it was carried through the country to the cheering crowds. Now, she has finally been permitted to return, and the people have come out in the crowds to meet her.
They would not allow the statue off the plane because they knew there was a tremendous expectation in Poland about the arriving of the statue. And so they had the idea of taking some wire and putting it against the statue and making an outline, and then carrying the empty figure to all the places the statue would have visited. When they came to Neopokhalana, the monks there took much stronger wire, made a really firm outline of the statue. And that practically caused a revolution in Poland. And 1 year later, we came back with the Pilgrim Virgin. And we arrived at the church just as the trumpets were blaring and the cardinal was blessing the first church the first new church he had ever been able to bless as a bishop. And they named it the Queen of the World. So you know how important it is for the Polish people that we're coming back now.
No nie, kochana, nie ma. To tak dla tych, co...
Nie może się rozplątać. Dziękuję.
Ja dużo zdrowia, dziękuję bardzo. Coś pani daje. Matko Boskie Fatimsko, bardzo proszę.
This is the shrine of the Black Madonna in Czestochowa. Legend has it that this icon of the Virgin Mary and the infant Jesus was painted by St. Luke on wood from the table of the Holy Family. The painting dates back to 1380 and is housed in the monastery of Jasna Góra in Czestochowa. Through the years, monks have venerated this picture by burning candles in front of it, which has darkened the paints used in the image. Thus, the nickname Black Madonna.
Madonna, Holy Madonna, how sweet to be a child of thee. Protect us, O Black Madonna, embrace us eternally.
Two slashes appeared on the cheek of the icon when an angry soldier attacked the painting. Decorating the walls inside the chapel are rosaries, crutches, medals, and plaques of all sizes and shapes. Each one represents a favor granted by praying to the Virgin Mary.
Well, here we are in the eternal city of Rome. Over my shoulder, I'm sure you can see the ancient city of Rome, called the Roman Forum. That was the Rome of the Caesars, the emperors, before Christ. It's a city which is the center of the Catholic faith, where Christianity spread from here across the world. It's the city of the Holy See, the successor of St. Peter. St. Peter walked these streets, and St. Paul. Both were killed here.
This is one of the oldest roads in the city. It's still used today. The narrow path is lined with stones from the days of St. Peter. Along this road, according to legend, Peter met a man he later recognized as Jesus. He asked the Lord why he had come to Rome. Jesus replied that he was coming back to be crucified again. Peter understood. He returned to Rome and was crucified on a cross, like Jesus. But he insisted on hanging upside down because he said he was not worthy to die as Jesus had died. At the place where Jesus and Peter had met on the road, a set of footprints was left in the dirt. They are now preserved in a small church on the road, are believed to be the footprints of Christ.
This is the place where St. Paul was beheaded. And legend has it that when his head was chopped off, it bounced 3 times. And each place where the head bounced, a fountain sprang up. We'll show you those fountains in a moment. And so it's called in Italian Tre Fontane, or three fountains. Behind me, you'll see an abbey, a Cistercian abbey, which has been here since the 4th century. It's one of the oldest buildings in Rome, this particular building. Parts of it original and parts obviously renewed. The monks have a vow of silence who live here, and they request when you go inside the abbey that you keep silent. So we do most of the talking out here. When you walk in, the silence overwhelms you. It just, wow, it engulfs you. Right now we're here at the barracks where the soldiers were, and Paul was in this particular place, was imprisoned overnight before the, Paul was imprisoned here overnight before his execution. And the next day he was led out of here down those steps to where we'll be going now to be executed. This was a hill here. This building wasn't there obviously then, this was just built over the building. So the head bounced there, then down to the next pillars, down to the bottom one, that's the three fountains. The three fountains sprang up, and that's why they call it Tre Fontane, or three fountains. Whether the legend is true or not, it's certainly historically true. This is where he was executed. Yeah. You are explaining on the spot where he died. To end the Queen of Peace flight pilgrimage in Rome, the pilgrims joined the Pope for a special Mass. This is a beatification ceremony for 121 Spanish martyrs who were killed for their religion at the hands of the communists. In addition, a laywoman named Narcisa Moran was also beatified.
Oh, we'll definitely be changed. I mean, there was a lot of praying, and we saw some poverty, and of course we saw that, in our opinion, probably Russia is not going to be hurt by our being there. But yes, there will definitely be a change in us, basically spiritually, I think.
It's changed me a lot. I've learned some new words to my vocabulary, but one of the most important things is to trust and to have faith. And if you give it over completely, that you will be led. I felt that I was being led for the last probably 3 years by our Blessed Mother.
To be a pilgrim means to become a little child and know that your father and your mother in heaven will provide, and get rid of all this stuff that requires you to control your schedule, to have all these knowings about where you're headed, and just to let go and just see how it works out. Because I'm very much a control person. And I've learned to be a little kid and know that Mom and Dad will take care of me. That's what it means to me to be a pilgrim now.
Well, you've been on the trip with us now, and you've seen what we've seen. Hopefully you've experienced something of the things we experience. I know for me, it was the highlight was probably Russia. Mainly because I wasn't expecting the feelings that I got in Moscow and the Russian people. I think, to me, one thing I'll never ever forget were the Russians who were accepting the rosaries. And these little old American ladies and old men on our group, and young ones too, of course, all of us going out, handing out rosaries and scapulars and medals in the streets of Moscow and St. Petersburg. One night we went down to the underground in the metro of Moscow, and I couldn't believe these ladies walking up and down the train, handing out rosaries, and everybody was accepting them, kissing them, blessing themselves. I remember mentioning to the group afterwards, could you imagine any of you doing that in New York, or Chicago, or St. Louis, or New Orleans? Could you imagine going downtown in our American cities, handing out rosaries, and everyone accepting them? But it happened in Russia, didn't it? You see, just like the Blessed Mother predicted almost 100 years, 75 years ago, Fatima, I will be victorious in Russia. My Immaculate Heart will conquer if you pray the Rosary, if you do those 6 Saturdays, those 5 rather Saturdays. See, and people have done that. All over the world, some of you have been praying. Those of you who weren't on the trip, you were part of that trip, even though you weren't with us, because your prayers made you part of that trip. All those of you who've prayed the rosaries, all those of you who've made the first 5 Saturdays, all those of you who have fasted, you were part of this victorious flight of the Queen. And we saw her victory when we crowned her Queen in Moscow. That was the highlight of the trip for me. But I'd like to encourage you now, that wasn't the end, that was the beginning. Russia is not yet converted. The conversion has begun. Russia is wide open now to conversion. It's hungry. Isn't it amazing that everything Mary predicted has come true? That the Berlin Wall was down, that the 2 Germanys are one, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, Russia itself, all no longer communist, and all fell without a shot, without anyone being injured or hurt. See, the weapons were not guns, the weapons were rosaries and fastings. And now Mary's asking that again for the world. Not only does Russia need to be converted, we in the West need to be converted. We've got a war here, all kinds of terrible things happening in our own country, immoral things, too numerous to mention. We need a conversion. And the same rosaries and the same prayers that made Mary victorious in Russia will make her victorious also in the West. Not only does communism need to be conquered, so does materialistic capitalism when it's not of God. See, the Pope himself said, both can be wrong. The greed of money, the capitalistic society, and the proletariat type of communism of Russia with its atheism. Both are 2 mountains that have to be knocked down. And that it even brought in Medjugorje, between those mountains, was what Medjugorje means, between the mountains. And now the Queen comes again between the mountains to say, let's level those mountains and make Mary victorious Queen. God bless you all.